On our 10th anniversary, Richard finally agreed to accompany me to a concert. When the time came, he canceled at the last minute. I gave the tickets to a friend. She's been a fan of that singer for a long time. I'll go with you next time. That very night, a video of him and Rose went viral. In the video, she leaned shyly into his arms and said, "I'm not alone. I came with my boyfriend." Richard didn't deny it. I didn't cry or make a scene. Instead, I liked, shared, and commented, "If you really like her, come back and finalize the divorce. Don't let that poor girl be a mistress." Chapter 1. When Richard gave my concert tickets to someone else, I was so angry I cried. He had no idea how many sleepless nights I spent trying to get those 2 tickets. I even asked several friends for help, but when he promised to go with me next time and said he'd keep his word, I foolishly forgave him again, until I saw that video trending. His childhood friend, Rose, was leaning shyly into his arms, saying, "I'm not alone. I came with my boyfriend." The camera zoomed in on them, and the whole crowd cheered. Richard pressed his lips together and didn't deny it. That's when I realized the friend he mentioned was Rose. Rose and Richard were childhood friends. She'd liked him since they were little. After her family moved abroad, they lost touch. A few years ago, her parents' business failed, and they both committed suicide. Rose, traumatized, returned to the country. That's when she reconnected with Richard. I stared at the video, fuming, and called him to confront him. The phone rang for a long time before he finally picked up. I asked him why he lied to me. As usual, he impatiently threw out the same excuse. "I didn't tell you because I knew you'd react like this. I've told you many times. I only see Rose as a sister." "Don't be so petty." The call was cut off from his end. I listened to the dial tone, staring blankly at the carefully prepared dinner on the table. Suddenly, I lost my appetite. I packed the food into containers, put it in the fridge, and cleaned the kitchen. The clock struck 1 a.m. Richard messaged me, "Are you still mad? What do you want to eat? I'll bring you something." I knew he was trying to appease me. After 10 years together, 5 of those married, he had learned exactly how to handle me. Give me a slap, then a sweet treat. It never failed. But this time, I didn't want to be handled. I didn't reply. A moment later, another message arrived. "How about those dumplings from the alley? I remember you love them." After a whole night of being angry, his mention of food made my hunger hit. I responded, "Sure, thanks." I don't know how long I waited, but I eventually fell asleep on the sofa. When I woke up, it was already 8 a.m. Richard hadn't returned. A blanket was draped over me. Our housekeeper, Mrs. Lee, walked out of the kitchen. "Awake? Why'd you sleep on the couch? Be careful not to get sick." I rubbed my numb arm and smiled kindly. "I was too tired. What do you want for breakfast?" "I'll make it for you." I shook my head. Richard said he'd bring me dumplings, but by noon, Richard still hadn't come home, nor had he sent any messages. The housekeeper quickly made me a bowl of noodles, with 2 eggs on top. "You should eat something. Mr. Liu is probably caught up with something. Don't starve yourself." I walked to the dining table and picked up my chopsticks. Chapter 2. I finished the bowl of noodles completely. The notification sound rang again. It wasn't Richard. It was my business partner, Lou. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Are you really not considering it? Going to LV's headquarters for a year would be beneficial not only for you but also for our studio." Lou and I co-founded a fashion design studio. A while ago, there was a designer competition hosted by the global luxury brand LV. The top 3 winners would get to study at LV's headquarters for a year under their chief designer. I happened to place 3rd. For a designer, this was an almost unattainable opportunity, and now, it was being presented to me. I hesitated for a long time. I was unfamiliar with the environment abroad, and I tend to take time to adjust. It felt hard to fit in. I also worried about my stomach issues and whether I'd find the food abroad to my liking. But deep down, it was because I couldn't bear to leave Richard. In the 10 years we'd been together, we hadn't spent more than 10 days apart. Richard's parents didn't have a good relationship. After he graduated from middle school, they divorced and both quickly started new families. Whether it was with his dad or his mom, he became an outsider. After that, he simply lived on his own. One New Year's Eve, Richard called me. The city outside was bright with festive lights. But where he was, it was so quiet that I could hear his breathing clearly. In a soft voice, he asked me, "Monica, I feel a bit lonely. Could you come and keep me company?" With just those words, I bought a train ticket and rushed to him overnight. It was a hard seat for over 10 hours. But at the time, I was so full of passion that I didn't feel tired or think it was hard. From then on, we were inseparable. I've been by his side for 10 years, supporting him from being a poor student with nothing to becoming the successful entrepreneur he is today. And now, he was attending a concert with another woman, publicly declaring their relationship. Worried I would pass up this opportunity, Lou called me directly. Before she could even speak, I said, "I'll go." She was stunned for a moment, then excitedly exclaimed, "You've finally come around. Don't worry about the studio. I'll handle everything. You just focus on learning." Over the next couple of days, check online for some information about the program. It won't hurt to get a head start. I smiled and agreed. Chapter 3. I've never been someone who learns easily. The only quality I have that stands out is my diligence. When I first started university, I fell in love with Richard at first sight. The more I got to know him, the deeper I fell. But I was shy by nature and didn't have the courage to confess my feelings. So I would sit in on his classes after finishing my own. Eventually, I became a familiar face. Even the professors at the business school knew Monica from the design department, who often attended their lectures. Sometimes they would even call on me to answer questions. If I got it right, the professor would say, "Look at her. Even the design students can get it right. Aren't you all ashamed?" If I got it wrong, they would laugh it off. Well, at least she's got spirit. I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of the person I liked. So I studied economics in secret. I spent night after night cramming with books. Eventually, I didn't hear the words "she's got spirit" very often, even though my motivations weren't entirely pure. That experience did help toughen me up. I chuckled to myself, shaking off the random thoughts in my head. Focusing again, I searched for relevant information online. Most of the material was in English, filled with difficult technical terms, and it wasn't long before I felt sleepy. Maybe it was because I hadn't slept well the night before, but I ended up dozing off right there on the carpet. I woke up to the sound of Richard coming home. Groggily, I lifted my head and met his eyes. He frowned instinctively. Rose had a sudden case of gastroenteritis last night, so I took her to the hospital. I stretched, cutting him off before he could finish. "Oh, I already know." He froze, his frown deepening. "You don't believe me? I'm telling you the truth. I don't disbelieve you." I closed my laptop and got up from the carpet, heading toward the study. "I have work to do." He quickly followed, grabbing my wrist and letting out a sigh. "I know I've deceived you, but I swear, I only did it because I didn't want you to feel upset." Next time, I turned to face him, keeping my tone calm the whole time. "You're overthinking it." "I'm not." Before I could finish, he suddenly flung my hand away. His face showed anger. I was baffled. What's wrong with him? Wasn't this exactly what he wanted? Me not crying or making a scene, not holding on to his relationship with Rose? Chapter 4. When I finally finished my work and came out of the study, it was already 7 p.m. Richard was in the kitchen, wearing an apron, moving around busily. When he saw me, he carried out a freshly made dish and said, "All done?" Perfect timing. "The last dish, your favorite. Sweet and sour ribs." He smiled at me, as if nothing from the afternoon had ever happened. My mind went blank for a moment, and I stood there, frozen. Ever since Rose came back, it seemed like he rarely cooked for me. Sometimes, I would beg him, saying I missed his cooking, but he would always brush me off impatiently. "Can't you be more understanding? I'm really busy. Where would I find the time to cook for you?" After hearing that enough times, I stopped asking. It wasn't that he was busy, he just didn't want to cook for me. More than once, I saw Rose post pictures on her social media. Sweet and sour ribs, braised prawns, bamboo shoots with pork, beef stew with tomatoes, all dishes I loved. And he had cooked for Rose. Richard came out with a small cake in hand. What are you standing there for? I snapped back to reality, lowered my head, and walked over to sit at the dining table. He sat across from me, with an apologetic look. He said, Monica, happy 10th anniversary. So, he did remember that yesterday was our 10th anniversary. But it was too late. Time couldn't be rewound. He skillfully sliced a piece of cake and placed it in front of me. You know Rose's situation. Her parents are gone, and she's been through a lot. Don't they say idols give people strength? That's why I went with her. And about the boyfriend thing, I didn't deny it because I didn't want to embarrass her. After all, she's a girl, and girls need their pride. Last night, she got food poisoning, acute gastroenteritis. I took her to the hospital, was busy taking care of her, and forgot to send you a message. In the past, if he had explained this much to me, I would have been overjoyed. I would have wanted to shout to the world, look, Richard still loves me. But now, it didn't seem to matter whether he loved me or not. My attention was drawn to the cake. I interrupted him, pointing to it. Did you make this yourself? He hesitated for a few seconds. Monica, ignoring him, I scooped a bite into my mouth. It was sweet but not too much. I raised an eyebrow and looked at him. Not bad. You've got some real talent. Huh? He forced a smile, barely holding it together. As long as you like it. Then, with a little patience, he pulled out a necklace and slid it across the table to me. You've wanted this necklace for a long time, haven't you? It was a beautiful butterfly pendant encrusted with blue diamonds. I really did like it. But just a few days ago, I saw the exact same one around Rose's neck. Under Richard's expectant gaze, I closed the necklace box. Thank you. I like it. Should I help you put it on? I shook my head. No need. After a moment, I added, it's not convenient for work. He abruptly stood up, the sound of the chair scraping against the floor sharp and jarring. Monica, can't you just let me finish? I looked at him in surprise. Finish what? Talking about Rose? The light in his eyes flickered back for a moment. I let out a small sigh of relief and smiled. It's okay. You grew up together. And now, with her family's situation, it's only right for you to take care of her. The light in his eyes instantly faded, and he seemed to collapse in on himself, as if all his strength had been drained. He forced a smile. That's good, that's good. I didn't know if he was saying it to me or to himself. After 2 bites of the cake, I was ready to leave. He grabbed my hand, his face a bit grim. Not eating anymore? I nodded. I'm not very hungry. He picked up a rib and placed it in my bowl. Even if you're not hungry, eat a little. Weren't sweet and sour ribs always your favorite? The ribs, once so delicious, now made me feel nauseous. But out of politeness, I took a bite. The familiar taste was there, but something seemed missing. His expression softened a bit, and his eyes showed more guilt. Where's the singer's next concert? We'll go together. He pulled out his phone and started searching for tickets online. It was their last farewell concert. As soon as I said that, he froze, staring at me, stunned. I'm sorry. I blinked. It's fine. Then let's go to another concert. There are plenty this year. If you can't decide which one to see, we'll go to all of them. What do you think? He looked at me, full of hope. I put down my chopsticks and sat up straight. Not much. Richard, I'm leaving. Chapter 5. Richard leaned back and exhaled a long breath. His expression returned to the arrogant look he always had, as if to say, I knew you were just being unreasonable. He looked at me and said, all right, Monica, you were mad. I apologized. We're both adults. Stop with the running away routine. I don't like it. I hadn't expected him to think like that. Yet, it felt inevitable. After all, I had thrown fits over him and Rose many times before. The worst time. I packed my bags and even signed the divorce papers. He chased me all the way to the airport, promising he would never see Rose again. Now that I think about it, he had made me so many promises, none of which he ever kept. Real departures are always silent. He knew this well, and he was sure I wouldn't leave him. I didn't explain. my mind preoccupied with how long it would take to get my passport, visa, and other travel documents in order. So, when Richard said he wanted to take me to a class reunion, I didn't hear him. The next second, he stood up, seething with anger. Monica, are you even listening to me? I stared at him blankly. What? The class reunion. You're coming with me. I had too much going on. Between preparing for my trip abroad and making sure the studio was set for my absence, I simply didn't have the time. So, I refused. He looked at me in disbelief. You don't want to go? I nodded. Why? I thought for a moment, then suggested, why don't you take Rose instead? You two know each other well. It'll be fun. He let out a cold laugh. Fine. As you wish. Richard stormed off into the bedroom, leaving me confused. What did I say wrong? His friends never liked me anyway. In their eyes, Rose and Richard were childhood sweethearts, meant to be together. If anyone should marry him, it should have been her, not me. They always thought I was an intruder who stole Richard away, so they didn't like me. But Richard valued them, and he kept them close. Most of the time, I suffered in silence, bearing their disrespect. I still remember the first time Richard took me to meet them. There was no joy or excitement as I had imagined. The way they looked at me was far from welcoming. Some even went out of their way to make things difficult for me. They lifted their glasses and pretended to toast. When I said I didn't drink, they slammed their glasses down, accusing me of disrespecting them. I had no choice but to force myself to drink. A few shots of liquor later, I was lightheaded, nauseous. When we got home, I complained to Richard, but he only offered a half-hearted consolation. They don't mean any harm. They're just messing with you. Back then, I was so naive. I actually believed it. Chapter 6. Before leaving, I planned to take my studio team out for a meal. I booked a restaurant that I usually wouldn't splurge on. I never expected to run into Richard and Rose. I was standing at the entrance when they pulled up in a car, and we bumped into each other. When Richard saw me, a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Rose, hanging onto his arm, greeted me warmly without the slightest awkwardness. Monica, what brings you here? Before I could answer, she laughed and said, Are you here because you're worried about Richard? Don't worry. I'll take good care of him for you. Her tone was familiar, almost too friendly. I smiled faintly and nodded. I appreciate it. Then I stepped aside to let them go in first. But Richard, for some reason, lost his temper. He grabbed my arm and pulled me aside. Monica, stop pretending. Is it so hard to admit you're jealous and couldn't bear to be away from me? I was speechless. For the first time, I realized just how absurd his thinking was. I have an appointment. He scoffed. An appointment? You're always so frugal. Even when treating people to a meal, you look for the best deal. Since when did you start spending this much? I didn't want to argue, so I just nodded absent-mindedly. Rose is waiting for you. His grip loosened, and his expression softened. I ran into her on the way. I gave her a ride. That's all. It wasn't planned. I looked at him, confused. What does that have to do with me? His face darkened again, and he gritted his teeth. Monica, you're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Just then, my team from the studio arrived. I pried his hand off. My friends are here. I have to go. Without waiting for his response, I walked straight toward them. Chapter 7. After working together for so long, everyone was reluctant to part ways. After dinner, someone suggested going to a second venue. I thought about it, since I didn't have to get up early the next day. I agreed. While washing my hands, I ran into one of Richard's old classmates. He had been drinking, his eyes slightly glazed, but he still recognized me immediately. What are you doing here? Before I could reply, he continued. Let me tell you, we only recognize Rose as Richard's wife. Don't waste your time. I shook the water off my hands expressionlessly. Oh, then I walked out of the bathroom, but I couldn't let it go. I turned around and went back. He had passed out nearby. Seeing no one else around, I kicked him twice, hard, right on the backside. Instantly, I felt much better. On the way back, feeling bored, I started scrolling through my phone. I happened to come across Rose's social media post. A group photo from the reunion. She and Richard were standing in the middle, her head resting on his shoulder. The caption read, "After all this time, the one I love is still by my side." If this had been before, I would have already called him by now. But now, I felt nothing. I even liked the post. Lou, sitting next to me, glanced over and asked, "Isn't that your husband?" I nodded, then added, "Soon-to-be ex-husband." Her eyes widened, and she asked if it was because of my decision to go abroad. No, don't overthink it. She was tipsy, so I gave her a vague answer, and she soon forgot about it. We played until midnight, and everyone had a great time. As we left the bar, I saw a message from Richard, sent hours ago. "Where are you? I'll pick you up." I figured he was already asleep, so I didn't respond. After making sure my friends got home safely, I flagged a taxi and headed back home. As soon as I opened the front door, the living room lights suddenly came on. Richard was standing by the entrance, his face dark with anger. I jumped in surprise. "Why didn't you reply to my message?" I waved my phone, it ran out of battery. He grabbed my phone and pointed to the 60% battery remaining. Out of battery? I didn't feel guilty about being caught in a lie. I calmly walked to the dining room and poured myself a glass of water. "I thought you were asleep." "How could I sleep, knowing you weren't home so late?" I vaguely remembered how, a long time ago, I also used to wait for Richard. He had a lot of social obligations and often came home late. I would leave a small, warm light on, curling up on the couch watching TV while waiting for him to return. No matter how late it was, he always made it home. Sometimes, I'd feel bad for him and tell him to stay at a hotel nearby. He'd always smile and say, "How could I? My baby is waiting for me at home." But ever since Rose came back, his nights away became more frequent. Rose was afraid of the dark, so he had to stay with her. Rose was in a bad mood, so he had to comfort her. I put down the glass. "I'm home now, aren't I? Go to bed." After a moment's thought, I changed direction and headed for the guest room. "I've had a few drinks. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. You should get some rest too." As I closed the door, I caught a glimpse of Richard standing under the light. His eyes were full of confusion and helplessness. Chapter 8. Richard started spending more time at home. For once, we were under the same roof, coexisting peacefully for a long stretch. During lunch, he handed me a ticket to a musical. It was for a very famous show, and tickets were hard to come by. "Let's go watch it tonight." He looked at me with a hopeful, almost cautious expression. I thought about the papers I had already signed and my flight scheduled for tomorrow morning, then nodded. Since there was a beginning, there had to be an end. We owed each other this last bit of dignity. He was overjoyed, like a child receiving candy, and placed a peeled shrimp in my bowl. I quietly pushed it aside, making sure he didn't notice, and breathed a sigh of relief. Before leaving, I applied makeup and carefully chose my outfit. When I stepped out of the bedroom, Richard's eyes lit up, but then, his expression faltered when he saw my empty fingers. "You're not wearing your ring?" I raised my hand casually and said, "Oh, it's not convenient to wear, and you're not wearing yours either, are you?" When we got married, it was during a tough time. We couldn't scrape together enough money for a diamond ring, so I found an old jeweler and had 2 silver rings made. I proposed to him myself. Back then, he held me tightly, his voice choked with emotion. Later, when we had more money, he bought me a bigger, more expensive ring, but I always kept wearing that silver ring. As for him, he replaced his silver ring with a more valuable diamond one. When I asked him about it, he said, "Now that my business is growing, wearing that ring would make people laugh." I guess that's when he started seeing me the same way he saw that ring, unsuitable for his status. Eventually, he stopped wearing a ring altogether. It wasn't long before other girls started approaching him. He always pushed the responsibility away, claiming it had nothing to do with him. Now, the silver ring he had once discarded was back on his finger. Richard eagerly extended his hand toward me, as if seeking praise. "I'm wearing it again. Maybe you could." "It doesn't make a difference. Let's go." We spoke at the same time, His face stiffened, and after a brief pause, he said, "All right. I'll get the car." The sunny weather from the morning had given way to thick clouds by the evening. It looked like rain was coming. Halfway there, Richard's phone rang. I glanced over and saw it was Rose. He immediately declined the call, turning to me nervously to explain. "I don't know why she's calling all of a sudden." Before he could finish, the phone rang again. "Answer it. It might be something urgent," I said. He pulled over to the side of the road, hesitated for a few seconds, then pressed the answer button. Rose's sobs came through the speaker. "Richard, I miss Mom and Dad. Why were they so cruel? Why did they leave me all alone? I can't go on like this. I really can't. Richard, I'm so sad." Richard lowered his head, stumbling over his words. "Rose, you should see a doctor." Her shrill voice cut through. "I won't go. I'm not going. You're just like them. You want me dead too, don't you? Fine. I'll die right now so you can all be happy." The sound of wind whooshing came through the call. Richard quickly shouted, "Rose, calm down. Don't move. I'm coming to find you." He hung up and looked at me, clearly torn. I opened the door without a second thought. "It's easy to get a taxi here. I'll go by myself. You'd better go check on her before something happens." He nodded. "I'm sorry to put you through this." I didn't mind. It wasn't the first time. Whenever something happened with Rose, I was always the one left behind. I stood by the road, and Richard suddenly got out of the car, pulling me into a tight embrace, squeezing the air out of me. "Wait for me," he said that, then quickly returned to the car, started it up, and drove off. I hailed a taxi and arrived outside the theater. Bored, I leaned against the entrance, waiting for him, but by the time the show was about to start, he still hadn't arrived. Raindrops began to fall, quickly turning into a downpour. The rain splashed onto the ground, creating little flower-like splashes. The ticket attendant urged me to enter, warning that once the show started, I wouldn't be allowed in. I glanced at the rainy scene in the distance. Richard wasn't coming. "All right. I'll go in first." I turned around and entered the theater. The seat next to me remained empty throughout the entire performance. After the show, I followed the crowd out of the theater. The rain was still falling. Chapter 9. By the time I got home, my clothes were soaked. Richard wasn't there. After taking a shower, I stepped out of the bathroom and saw a message from Rose. It was a photo of someone's back. 10 years had passed, but I could recognize at a glance that the person was Richard. He was standing in the kitchen, making porridge. A message followed. "Monica, you can't beat me." In Richard's heart, I will always come first. She finally couldn't hold back and declared war. I replied, "Then let Richard come back and finalize the divorce. It's not fair for you to keep playing the mistress." After sending the message, I put my phone aside and started packing my bags. There wasn't much to take. Sister Lou told me that once I was abroad, I could buy new things. Out with the old, in with the new. I agreed with her. I only packed a few changes of clothes. After I finished packing, I took the signed divorce papers out of the drawer and placed them on Richard's pillow. Then I removed the SIM card from my phone, grabbed my suitcase, and left. Chapter 10. By the time Richard left Rose's place, it was already 11 p.m. He scoured the city to find a flower shop that was still open. He bought Monica's favorite hyacinths and stopped in an alley to buy dumplings. He had promised her last time, but because Rose had ended up in the hospital, he hadn't fulfilled his promise. This time, he wanted to make it up to her. He drove home anxiously. Richard knew, deep down, that it was his fault. They had planned to see a musical together, but at the last minute, he canceled. It was because Rose had called him, emotionally broken, threatening to commit suicide. He had parents, but they were practically absent, so he understood Rose. He understood her pain and despair. This would be the last time. He told himself. He had already found a professional therapist for Rose. No matter what, this time, he would make sure she saw a doctor. As for Monica, she would understand. When he got home, the lights were still on. He breathed a sigh of relief. Monica was still waiting for him. That meant she wasn't mad, even if she was upset. Richard was confident he could make it up to her. After all, she was the easiest to please. He took a deep breath and opened the door. Monica. She wasn't there. An overwhelming sense of panic washed over Richard. His hands trembled as he searched every room in the house, until he saw the divorce papers on the pillow. Panic turned to rage. He picked up the papers, his anger boiling. How dare she? Richard was convinced that Monica was just throwing another tantrum. But then he thought about her strange behavior lately. Something was off. He pulled out his phone and dialed her number. Over and over. A cold, mechanical voice repeated, "The number you are trying to reach is currently unavailable." In a fit of rage, he threw the flowers he had bought against the wall. If she had the guts, she would never come back, Richard thought. 1 day passed, then 2, 5, 10. Richard waited for 10 days. He made countless calls and sent countless messages, all in vain. Finally, he realized she was really gone. The truth hit him like a ton of bricks. And in a frenzy, he rushed to her studio, but her colleagues told him she had gone abroad. Richard stood there, stunned. Abroad? The colleague nodded. She didn't tell you? He forced a smile, unable to admit that, as her legal husband, he was the last to know her whereabouts. Richard booked the earliest flight. He had to find her. His mind was a mess. Even if he found her, he didn't know what he would say or do. But he had to go. Before he left, Rose showed up again. She stood at the door, tears streaming down her face. "Richard, can you go with me to see the doctor? I'm scared to go alone." For the first time, he didn't agree to her request. She cried harder and threw herself into his arms, clinging to his waist. "Richard, don't leave." Richard pushed her away forcefully. His brows furrowed. "How do you know I'm leaving?" The only person he had told about going abroad to find Monica was an old friend from high school. No one else knew. Rose lowered her head and said nothing. A wave of anger surged through him. In front of Rose, he dialed that friend's number. As soon as the call connected, he got straight to the point. "Did you tell Rose I was going abroad?" His friend, unaware of his tone, responded. "What's wrong?" "Richard, you and Rose have been close since childhood. Now that Monica's gone, isn't it the perfect time for Rose to take her place?" He, "You're welcome." Richard's veins bulged with anger as he clenched the phone. "Are you out of your mind? Who told you I like Rose?" His friend was taken aback. "You don't like her? Then why do you always ditch Monica for her? Get lost!" Richard could no longer contain himself and smashed the phone to the ground. Rose, startled, looked at him with tear-filled eyes. He stared back coldly. "You should leave too." After Rose left, Richard collapsed to the floor, feeling as if his heart was being torn apart. What had he done to Monica? Chapter 11. I knew getting a divorce wouldn't be easy. Richard was obsessive and wouldn't easily agree to a divorce. So, I didn't expect him to sign the divorce papers. In any case, I planned to return after a year, and by then, going through the legal process would be much quicker. But I never expected that 3 months after I arrived in Paris, he would show up too. I was startled when I saw him standing outside my apartment building. He had lost a lot of weight. His hair was cut short, and his clothes hung loosely on his frame. His eyes were dark with bags beneath them, as if he hadn't slept in a long time. When he saw me, he seemed awkward and nervously took the things from my hands without saying a word. I didn't refuse him. There were things we should have cleared up last time. I led him back to the apartment. When he saw the pair of men's shoes by the door, the color drained from his face, and he looked like he might collapse. I explained, "Keeping a pair of men's shoes at the door makes me feel safer, especially since I live alone." I smiled and continued, "We're not divorced yet. I know my boundaries." He forced a smile, a grim one, and then lowered his head, whispering, "I'm sorry." I raised an eyebrow and opened the door. "Come in." The apartment wasn't big, and I'd been busy, so it was messy. Since we only had a few words to say, I hadn't bothered tidying up. Neither of us spoke. The entire room felt oppressively silent. I cleared my throat, breaking the tension. "Where's Rose?" "Waiting for you at the hotel?" As soon as I said that, he jumped up, knocking a glass off the table, shattering it on the floor. He crouched down to pick up the pieces and cut his hand. Red blood dripped onto the floor. Along with the blood, his tears began to fall too. This man, over 6 feet tall, skinny and hunched on the floor, was crying like a child. I came alone. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with desperation. Monica, I know I was wrong. Can you give me another chance? Chapter 12. What a joke. I had already made the mistake of trusting Richard once. There was no way I'd make it again. I thought you came to talk about the divorce. If not, then you should leave. I opened the door, signaling for him to go. It seemed like he wanted to say something more, but in the end, he stayed silent. He went downstairs and sat outside all night, 4 or 5 days straight. It was the same. I didn't feel moved. In fact, I found it absurd, until the 6th day, when it rained. A male colleague had driven me home. His name was Leo, a French guy who blushed easily. He was also the winner of the design competition we'd both entered. As we said our goodbyes downstairs, Richard suddenly rushed over. He pulled me behind him and glared at Leo, his face full of hostility. Who is he? I pushed him away. What does that have to do with you? He froze, his face contorting in anger. Monica, don't you have any sense of boundaries? We're still married. I laughed bitterly, my voice cold and filled with disdain. Richard, if there's anyone in this world who has no right to talk about boundaries, it's you. Is admitting that you cheated really so hard? Richard's face changed, a complicated expression flashing in his eyes. His voice was hoarse. I didn't. Monica, I didn't. He reached out, trying to touch me, but I dodged him. Filthy, your body may not have, but your heart did. The umbrella slipped from his hand, falling to the ground. His face turned pale, and he staggered. In the end, he couldn't hold on any longer and collapsed in the rain. Chapter 13. For a long time after that, I didn't see him again, but I did receive the divorce papers he sent. He had modified the terms, leaving all the property to me, while he walked away with nothing. I didn't refuse. After all, he was the one who had done wrong, and I deserved it. However, I heard that he fell seriously ill, and with his obsession with work, his health continued to deteriorate. I also heard that he had fallen out with his old friends. The ones who had once targeted me were blacklisted by him in the industry. Not only did they lose their jobs, but no one else dared to hire them. 2 of them, somehow, got hold of my phone number. They called to apologize, but I chose not to forgive them. As for Rose, that video from the concert was exposed, showing that she knowingly got involved as a mistress. It went viral. Netizens also uncovered her past misdeeds abroad, bullying classmates, promiscuity. She became public enemy number 1. Richard even added fuel to the fire. After she realized that Richard had completely abandoned her, she turned to another small-time businessman, but his wife found out and beat her half to death. Her once proud face was ruined. The last time anyone saw her, she was working in a small shop on the street. Rumor had it she had taken a wrong path in life. None of this concerned me. After returning home to finalize the divorce, I threw myself into my studies. Thanks to my outstanding performance, the design director decided to keep me on. I weighed my options and agreed. With Sister Lou in charge of things back home, I focused on expanding the business abroad. Chapter 14. In the 3rd year after our divorce, Richard had a car accident. They said it was due to exhaustion and mental fatigue. He didn't have any other emergency contacts in his phone, so the hospital called me. It just so happened that I was back home attending Sister Lou's daughter's 1-month celebration, so I went to the hospital and signed the consent for surgery. The doctor said his injuries were severe, and it wasn't certain whether he would survive. I didn't feel sad, nor did I feel happy. Life and death are determined by fate, and wealth is a matter of destiny. Before his surgery was over, I boarded a plane back to Paris. He was lucky enough to survive, but he lost a leg. When he woke up, he called to thank me. I smiled indifferently. Then he asked if I could visit him. He said he missed me. I withdrew my smile and coldly responded, "No." Later, I remarried. My new husband was also a designer. He didn't talk much and blushed easily, but whenever we were together, his eyes never left me. I wasn't keen on having a wedding, but he insisted. He wanted to design everything himself, from the drawings to the final details. It took him nearly a year to prepare everything. On our wedding day, Richard showed up. He leaned on a cane, even though we were the same age. His hair had turned white, and he looked much older. He didn't give me a wedding gift, probably knowing that I wouldn't have accepted it, but he did give me a bank card. Inside was all the money he had earned for me over the years. I accepted it graciously and thanked him. He shook his head and walked away. When the ceremony started, he stood in a corner, most of his body hidden in the shadows. His expression was solemn and devout. I saw his lips move, as if he were saying, "I do," or maybe, "I love you." Chapter 15. During our honeymoon, I unexpectedly ran into that singer from years ago. After he announced his retirement, he traveled the world. We happened to meet in a small town in Italy. Maybe because we were from the same country, we hit it off right away. When he found out I had missed his concert, he wasn't regretful at all. Instead, he burst out laughing. It was all meant to be. He casually picked up the shop owner's guitar. That summer evening, outside a small outdoor cafe, he sang a song just for me. The lyrics went like this: "Love is narrow, the world is vast, and we must grow up.